the Honorable Favour Williams, and of course our Minister of Information, Education and Youth, Senator the Honorable Roel Reid, joining us. All right, so good morning, everyone. Thank you once again for attending a post-cabinet media briefing. It's been a very active past 2 weeks. May I recognize representatives from the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, along with members of the media, and in particular we have two special guests, students from the Northern Caribbean University who are here doing a little study as well. Prior to Minister Reid taking the platform to just inform you about some updates on cabinet deliberations over the past 2 weeks, may I just inform you that Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, is now in New York, United States, where he's attending the United Nations General Assembly. He's been there since Monday morning early, and so far he's had bilateral meetings with the President of Kenya. He spoke about economic and cultural cooperation with Jamaica, as well as progress made so far. He's also had bilaterals with the Prime Minister of Denmark, meetings with the Jamaican diaspora, and of course a courtesy call with the Commonwealth Secretary General, and they spoke about Jamaica's role in the Commonwealth. The Prime Minister is expected to make his presentation to the UN General Assembly tomorrow, that's Thursday, tomorrow at 2:30 Jamaica time, and we'll give you the online credentials for that. Of course, over the last 2 weeks too, Cabinet has had some deliberations. Some people would call it a retreat, not quite. It's a really working meeting, long meetings, where they held several discussions on the economy. And Minister Williams is here to provide some very, very successful and useful information regarding economic activities so far. Before all of that, though, let me take the opportunity to invite the Minister of Information, Education and Youth. I turn it around all the time just because he has a big portfolio. The Honorable Senator Roel Reid.
Thank you very much, Press Secretary. And let me say good morning to everybody and to our students from NCU who are here with us, and of course, all right, thank you very much. Right, so want to recognize my colleague minister also, Honorable Favour Williams. Very short update on some major decisions coming out of Cabinet recently. Cabinet received and approved the following annual reports, financial statements for tabling in Parliament. The Jamaica Deposit Insurance Corporation, JDIC, for the year ending the 31st of March 2017. National Water Commission, year ending 2015-2016. The Toll Authority report of 2016-2017. Maritime Authority of Jamaica, 2016-2017. Trade Board Limited, 2014, 2015, and 2015, 2016. And the Office of Utilities Regulation, 2017 to 2018 annual report. By way of national announcements, we would like to formally announce the South Coast Highway Improvement Project. In recalling decisions of December 2015 and August 2016, Cabinet took note of the division of the project to provide local components in Part B, the Yallas to Port Antonio and Morant Bay to Cedar Valley. Cabinet therefore approved the implementation schedule and governance framework for the South Coast Highway Improvement Project. Part B, local components in the estimated amount of $85,449,419 to be contracted out by China Harbor Engineering Company Limited, check through local subcontractors. Secondly, the joint venture agreement on the Morant Bay Urban Center in St. Thomas. In keeping with the decision of July 2014, which designated the development of a shovel-ready initiative project and advised that the properties earmarked for the development comprise lands that previously housed the Goodyear Limited factory that ceased operations in 1997, Cabinet accepted the outline of the joint venture agreement between the Factories Corporation of Jamaica, FCJ, and China Harbor Engineering Company Limited, Czech, to construct a new urban center. This new center will be constructed on 28 acres and 365 square feet during a 2-year construction period, based on an unsolicited proposal submitted by FCJ by Czech. Cabinet has also instructed that this joint venture agreement include a clause which allows the government to divest its equity through a public offering on the Jamaica Stock Exchange, and directed that the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sports have consultation with the Factories Corporation of Jamaica. Factories Corporation of Jamaica will incorporate considerations for heritage, culture, and sport, including the replacement of the Goodyear Sports Oval. Thirdly, the joint venture agreement for the development of Naga Head Technology Park in Portmore. Cabinet also approved a joint venture agreement between FCJ and Czech for the development of 34 acres and 810 square feet over a construction period of 2 years. The Cabinet also instructed that a joint venture agreement should include a provision for the government to divest its equity through a public offering on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. Amendment to the agreement between the government of Jamaica and the Russian Federation for the waiver of visa requirements. Having received the initial agreements of 2013 and 2014, which had set out varying periods of 30 to 90 days, Cabinet has given approval for an amendment to this initial agreement to facilitate the waiver of visa requirements for mutual visits of citizens of Jamaica and Russia. So it will be a reciprocal arrangement. The Federation arrangement with the Russian Federation to facilitate tourism and business purposes superiors not exceeding 90 days per annum. Drafting instructions have been issued to effect the necessary changes. I'd like now to conclude by giving an update on the contracts that we have approved over the period. First of all, the variation in medical gases contract between Western Regional Health Authority and the Industrial Gases Limited. Cabinet approved the variation of a contract originally awarded by the Western Regional Health Authority to IGL Industrial Gases Limited for the supply of medical gases. This is in keeping with recommendations of the National Contracts Commission for the variation in the amount of $47,559,929.36. Cabinet also agreed for the award of a contract to Gulfstream Petroleum SRL for the supply and delivery of automotive diesel oil and unleaded gasoline to the Errol Flynn boatyard in Port Antonio, Portland. The contract in the sum of $136,786,458.77 is for the supply and delivery of 986,483 liters of automotive diesel oil and 54,552 liters of super unleaded 90-octane gasoline for a 2-year period. And finally, the rehabilitation and expansion of Gale Multipurpose Center. Cabinet gave approval for the award of contract to Marshall Construction Company Limited in the sum of $85,178,459.24 to execute the rehabilitation and expansion of the Gale Multipurpose Phase 1 works in St. Mary. And that concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Reid. Certainly some very interesting deliberations and conclusions made by Cabinet that you may be able to ask questions of shortly. May I now invite the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service to give an update. Some very, very good news coming by way of economic growth.
Thank you, Madam MC. Colleague Minister, the Honorable Royal Reid, members of the media, students from NCU, other distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. Thank you. All right, I'll begin with a very positive report. Yesterday, Standard & Poor's, one of the 3 global rating agencies, affirmed Jamaica's rating at single B and raised its outlook to positive from stable. Standard & Poor's said that after many years of economic, fiscal, and monetary reforms, Jamaica has made material progress in achieving macroeconomic stability and improvement in its external debt burden. Accordingly, Standard & Poor's said, we are revising our outlook on Jamaica to positive from stable and affirming our single B long and short-term sovereign credit ratings on the country. The positive outlook reflects the at least 1 in 3 likelihood of an upgrade if, in the next 12 months, Jamaica further strengthens its external liquidity position while maintaining tight fiscal policy, high primary surpluses, and modestly positive real GDP growth. If you will recall, in less than 3 months ago, in July of this year, Moody's also affirmed its rating and also changed its outlook from stable to positive. So where we are now, we have 2 of the major rating agencies, global rating agencies, that have changed their outlook on Jamaica to positive from stable. Let me report on the supplementary estimate and the fiscal policy paper that was laid in Parliament yesterday. It's the first supplementary estimate for fiscal 2018-19 was laid in Parliament yesterday, along with the interim fiscal policy paper, and both of these were referred to the PAAC and the Standing Finance Committee for review. In the first supplementary budget, against the backdrop of the overperformance on tax revenues to the end of July 2018, the positive revision of the tax revenues forecast to the end of March 2019, the very robust performance of capital expenditure and savings on the recurrent side of the original budget, the proposed additional expenditure of 17.8 billion will be on both the recurring and capital budgets. On the recurring expenditure, the additional spending will be 12.4 billion, while the capital budget is proposed to be increased by 5.3 billion. These expenditures are to be covered by better than budgeted tax revenues and additional distributions from public bodies. The primary surplus is now programmed to be at $143 billion, which satisfies the 7% of GDP requirement. Additionally, I'm pleased to report that project execution under the Major Infrastructure Development Program, MIDP, has been progressing ahead of schedule. Accordingly, further capital expenditure has been provided for to continue the pace of implementation of the 3 major works that are simultaneously underway in the Kingston metropolitan area. I also want to remind you that the IMF recently completed its 4th review for Jamaica's standby arrangement. As you know, successive governments have been steadfastly implementing Jamaica's economic reform program, which is now supported by the precautionary standby arrangement. The economic reform program remains on track with the successful completion of the 4th review on September 21, 2018. At the end of the review visit, Ms. Ramakrishnan, the IMF mission chief, concluded that program implementation remains robust. All quantitative performance criteria for end June 2018 were met, and structural reforms are on track. The primary surplus of central government operations exceeded the program target by 0.7% of GDP, driven mainly by continued buoyant taxes. Capital expenditure, which has historically or traditionally lagged, exceeded budget by 13%. and non-borrowed reserves overperformed by over US $400 million. The IMF said in its report that it is important for the Bank of Jamaica to continue improving monetary policy signaling and limiting FX interventions to episodes of disorderly FX market conditions. Meanwhile, the mission chief highlighted that the government is moving to table legislation that amends the Bank of Jamaica Act to anchor monetary policy on price stability. Ongoing improvements in the monetary policy toolkit and clear communication are essential for the success of this flagship reform. IMF also noted that strong economic fundamentals and sustained policy implementation of the government's reform program provide the private sector with an unprecedented opportunity to expand domestic investment, generate economic opportunities, and become the growth engine for Jamaica. Debt to GDP is expected to reach 98.9% of GDP at the end of fiscal 2018-19. And now I want to address some questions that were raised in different fora about the agreement signed between the government of Jamaica and New Day Aluminum Jamaica Limited, the company that purchased certain assets of the former mining company Noranda and was granted permission for mining activities. By way of background, I want to state that successive governments have maintained two regimes for the bauxite industry: the levy regime, in which companies are charged, and in which companies are charged a levy on their production, and the income tax regime. This has always been the case across governments, these two regimes. Let me just say that on coming to government in 2016, we found a bauxite industry that was in crisis. There had been no bauxite mining at Kirkvine since 2009. Alpart Refinery had been closed for 7 years. The government's ownership in Jamalco, the CAP partnership, was a major fiscal risk. Noranda was in bankruptcy courts in the US with a very uncertain future, having filed in their courts in February of 2016. A US $12.5 million line of credit that Noranda had issued to the government of Jamaica that could have been drawn on to pay outstanding bauxite levies was left undrawn and allowed to expire under the prior government. If we think back then and ask, what were the headlines in the news then? In December of 2015, headline in one of the major papers, bauxite job cuts, massive redundancy to hit Noranda workers in January. In January of 2016, again, bauxite job cuts, Noranda to slash 190 positions. That was the state of the companies in the bauxite alumina industry. That is what we found when we came to government. And we had to set about to rescue the industry at a time when alumina prices were at their lowest in about 5 years. So fast forward to 2018, as a result of being able to negotiate with the new company called New Day, over 300 jobs were saved and all monies owed to the workers were paid. The partnership agreement with New Day prevented any disruption of Noranda's bauxite operations. We believe that the new arrangement that were entered into will earn the money more in US dollars compared to the traditional levy system. Under the agreement, the government will earn 17.33% earnings before tax, calculated based on earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, or US $150 per ton of dried bauxite shipped, whichever is greater. The royalty payments of US 50 cents per dry metric ton of ore shipped will also remain in effect. Of note, when the agreement was signed recently, New Day paid to the government some US $7 million, or approximately 959 million Jamaican dollars. This represents a significant part of the US $17 million owed. The rest is to be paid over 36 months, and these are all legacy payments as well as royalties. The agreement that was signed was for 25 years for the bauxite mining, but the tax regime has a 3-year review clause. So every 3 years it will be reviewed. No other agreement that has been signed has this clause in it. Yes, we know that bauxite prices have recovered, but when you look at the reasons for the recovery, you have to question how sustainable this recovery might be. And so there are adverse events globally that have helped to strengthen prices, and these include a major refinery in Brazil that is operating at 50% capacity after the plant was flooded. You've had strike activity in a major plant in Australia, and then you had sanctions that the US imposed that affected Russian-owned companies such as UC Rusal that owns Windalco. So I hope that provides some background and answers to the questions that have been asked. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Minister Williams, for that update on matters having to do with the economy and certainly the Naranda deal. May I then invite members of the media who have questions to pose your questions now. You may raise your hand, I'll identify you, and then we ask that you say the media entity you represent and ask your question. Until we get the microphone to persons, I neglected to also update you on the fact that the Prime Minister on Monday delivered an address to the Nelson Mandela Peace Summit, and two Ministers Johnson Smith and Dr. Christopher Tufton are in New York with the Prime Minister. You know that the UN is also focusing on sustainable development goals and also non-communicable diseases. The
current price for bauxite.
Thanks, Dasha. Minister?
Thank you for the question. I don't have the figures right here to quote to you right now, but remember that when these calculations were done, when the estimates were done, they take into consideration not just the operations here in Jamaica, but also in the US. So there are a number of estimates that were made in terms of, the long-term outlook for the profitability of the company.
But that's where the cookie kind of crumbled, because the agreement covers New Day's operations not only in Jamaica but across the world. And we know companies have creative accounting where they can transfer losses in one area across to try to deny paying taxes or the profit sharing agreement in Jamaica. So how, with that possibility, we still believe that we have a better deal doing a profit sharing than a bauxite level in which we are guaranteed a sum as long as you mine bauxite?
Well, you'll be happy to know that in Jamaica now, we have a transfer pricing regime, which means that our tax office, Tax Administration of Jamaica, can look at companies' books. We are also signatories to information sharing from other countries as it relates to tax affairs of companies. So it's a lot harder now for companies to, do profit shifting among countries. Again, there's information sharing, and we have our regime in place now with prescribed rules and so on and so forth that will limit what companies can do in terms of shifting profits.
All right, just before you go, if you have the calculations, can you share them throughout the day with the difference between the what we expect to earn from the profit sharing agreement vis-a-vis the levy at current prices, not the $1.50. We're talking at current prices.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Dashan. Any other questions from members of the media here this morning? You have more? All right. Provided your colleagues have no other, then I see a hand on this side. All right, we're getting the microphone to you.
Morning, Chris Patterson, GIS.
Yes.
Minister,
Good morning,
this
Chris.
one is for you. Morning. How has the changes to the school feeding program been progressing? And also, can you give an update on how the regions, update from the regions read the start of the new school year? How has the school year been progressing, the update from the regions?
All right, thank you, Chris. So 2 questions, really. School feeding and progress made so far, 3-4 weeks into the start of the new school year. All right.
Thank you very much. Happy to report that the school feeding program is progressing very satisfactorily. You would have recalled that we have provided a substantial more resources to the school feeding program. When the government came into power, one of the first thing we did was to increase the school feeding by 47%. So we're now up to about $4.7 billion for the allocation for PATH. And so we have now sought, having done the research, that 98% of our schools now have their own canteen. And we are paying over 1,007 cooks to make sure that what we are doing is provide a very balanced, nutritious meal solution to our students rather than relying on baked products coming out of NPL. So there is a de-emphasizing of NPL. In fact, as I said, there's only 2% of schools currently that don't have their own canteen that we are now seeking to ensure that NPL provides support for those institutions. So far as I'm concerned, we're moving in the right direction. Again, we say to schools that they need to ensure they communicate with their regional offices on a very timely basis, because each year we require the schools to indicate the enrollment and the students who are on PATH, because we only allocate resources based on their registered, verified persons who are on the PATH program. So I know a lot of persons expect that we just to distribute products without any accountability. So I want in the conversation people to understand the government cannot just allow its resources to be plundered without accountability. Secondly, in regards to the start of the school year, we have been having very successful starts to the school year. We did a lot of work behind the scenes. In fact, we started as early as January of each year to make sure that we have a continuous furniture repairs program. We have a new furniture program, and we make sure that schools make the requisition very early. Textbook replacement, we do replacing about 10% of the stock. We have done a lot of critical repairs to our schools, and everything have been rolling out quite fine. We are working with our school leadership to make sure that as we start the new school year, that whatever the issues that they have from time to time, we're here to support them to make sure that we have our schools being administered and running in very good condition.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Chris, for that question. In the front, Mr. Mitchell.
Hi, morning, William Mitchell, Nationwide News. Question for you again, Minister. Earlier this week, your opposition counterpart, Reverend Thwaites, he had a press conference where he claimed that the new curriculum for PEP was being distributed in a haphazard way he claimed that some schools didn't get the curriculum until this weekend, and the curriculum was delivered on a Saturday when school was out, and it was left with, shops and things like that. First of all, is that so? And if so, why was that done?
Thank you for that question, William.
Thank you very much. The first response is I don't think we should try to politicize education and try to score political points. This particular government, when we were in opposition, and when Prime Minister Holness was then the spokesperson on education, we didn't do it. And I am seeing the emergence of that, and we want to ask that we don't do so. The truth is that as we move into the 21st century, a lot of the national standards curriculum was predicated on utilizing modern technology. And the national standards curriculum, remember there was a pilot and there has been a rollout. We have actually been rolling out the national standards curriculum since 2016, having piloted before. So the curriculum have been distributed to schools and teachers in soft copy long ago. We have placed them on jump drives. We have provided all kinds of support, including the fact that they have access to the ministry by virtue of sending an email or WhatsApp if you really want it. Now, there was a call recently for us to provide it in hard copy. Late requests, mind you. And we have sought to respond to those rather late requests in the day because we are a very responsive administration. We have changed the modality of how we would have normally distributed these materials from our ministry. In prior times, we would have given them to the regional offices, and the offices between themselves and the schools would have collected. To ensure they got out to the schools in a more organized and speedier way, we have actually now utilized creatively NPL that have a whole network. They are actually a logistics operation. They distribute products to all the schools that's on the book. Based on there. So we have utilized them now to deliver the materials to the schools. And in their attempt to deliver, the fact is that they have a lot of schools, they're not going to get all of them during the day. But that was the same modality where in delivering NPL products, they from time to time would have left
who had already purchased PEP material to be reimbursed.
GSAT.
Yes. Where do you stand on the issue?
Well, first of all, we have been at pains and we have been partnering with the media over months now to prepare and sensitize the public about the national standards curriculum and PEP. We made it very clear from the beginning that the content, and I even yesterday made a reference that we have passed through changing from O levels to CXC and was when the same subject, math, is the same math, so you could use those same texts when we were transitioning from A levels to CAPE, same issue, same content if you're doing biology or chemistry, if the content remained the same, the books you were doing before were still relevant. So we have said that while the publishers may not change the name, have not been able to change necessarily the name and adopt entirely to PEP, but the content hasn't changed. In fact, the last 2 sittings of GSAT was based on the same national standards curriculum. It's the same text that we're using because PEP is largely a change in item types, right? So we don't have communication task anymore. We have ability test. We have performance task, which is done as a school-based assessment. So the textbook, we've said guidedly, are okay. There has been some issues in terms of workbook, and that's an area that I must tell you, by virtue of policy, we have to review the supplementary process, because even when the ministry gives guidance to say, okay, this is what we would suggest based on your own recommendation, there are persons who add to it. And we couldn't understand, therefore, if we are shifting to PEP, where the item types would have changed, I don't think it would be reasonable to expect that a PEP workload would be adequate in this dispensation. So we have said, based on the review, and by the most schools were compliant. There are just some schools that, in our investigation, didn't comply. In fact, I found in one school where you know, that was rather responsible, where the secretary was left to indicate what the book list was, and of course send out the wrong information. So we've had those kind of situation. So the ministry, in our view, wasn't irresponsible in terms of how we communicated the system. But there's light at the end of the tunnel, because what we are saying to those parents, that even the workbooks for GSAT still have value, because what now you need to do is use them creatively to say, use the same items and now raise the higher levels where you're going to now seek to ask students now to show their work and explain their answers, give reasons for the answers, or suggest alternatives, because that's basically the same way that we are framing the PEP items. So you can use that, and I'm asking the teachers to use those in those creative ways. So they can still be used. So we therefore reject that call and say that in the context, I believe there is some utility, and it's not that the ministry would have given any edicts to purchase these particular materials. I want to also use this opportunity as well to say that we are now putting together practice items. So each student, teachers will have theirs, and each student, free of cost, will have a booklet of practice items. And we will ensure that there is an exclusive PEP website, free of cost, available. There will be, of course, utilization of YouTube and other social media forms and platforms to distribute content and practice items, so that the parents will get a bonus that, having expended on those materials, they're getting other free resources that will enable all our teachers and students to be adequately prepared. And the last bonus that we are offering as well is that we started with grade 4 and then GSAT to have, already we're having camps, PEP camps, and there will be prep for PEP camps leading up to the final sitting of the curriculum-based test in April, meaning that the ministry will ensure and put on, using our own resources, right across each of the 6 regions to ensure that no child is left behind, no school is left behind, in terms of ensuring there is more than adequate preparation for the first sitting of PEP. I said yesterday, I'm an experienced pilot. Having taken off, I expect to land safely.
Thank you, Minister, for that comprehensive response. In addition, though, I mean, you know, we do recognize that this is a new dispensation, and persons will have some anxiety. So a big part of the dialogue is that we welcome, you know, the feedback, the comments from parents, so that the system can be tweaked. I mean, we're talking about the future of our children, the education of our children. So wherever adjustments are needed, then Minister Reid has said that he and his team certainly are always willing to do that. The PEP camps certainly is a direct response to that as well. Dashan, again.
Okay, Minister. I noticed the two questions from William. You sort of danced around them without answering them directly. You gave a speech about community service and involving community without answering the question directly, and you asked a question from the National Parenting Association whether or not you support the call for the government to reimburse without being definitive. You gave a long speech, and I struggled to find a definitive answer in the speech you gave from William.
All right, so hang on, Minister, you can come back. But again, I think the Minister was very succinct in what he had to say in response. But Minister, if you want to, okay?
Well, I'm saying for the reason I have to set the context and explain that we don't see any reason to acknowledge and support it. Because first of all, those books would have been purchased, the ministry didn't purchase those books, they was purchased by parents. I'm not sure how the government could be in the business of refund. So, and what I've said is that the workbooks have utility. They can be used very constructively and creatively. And that's what PEP is all about, problem solving, right? I did assure the parents that the government, on top of what has been done before, is providing free PEP material so everybody will be adequately prepared. So I don't see that the government is in any way disenfranchising anybody, and that those who have expended those resources, they can be used constructively.
Thanks.
Where's the other question that I didn't answer?
No, man, I want to ask Minister Williams two more questions, if I'll be allowed. All right, Minister, in the fiscal policy paper tabled yesterday, and you mentioned it, it was mentioned that the reason for the increase, well, one of the reasons for the increased allocation for this fiscal year is because the 3 roadworks projects are running ahead of schedule, and that will, the government, it's a capital B, those are capital B projects, GOJ and our external partner, i.e. China. How much more money is being drawn down in the loans this year, this fiscal, to finance those projects to go in tandem with the government's own allocation?
I think it's about $5.1 billion, but let me just...
That's from the government side. I'm talking from the Chinese side. How much more loans will be pulling down in this fiscal to facilitate roadworks?
I think that's it, the totality. Can I send that figure for you? I don't want to give you a wrong figure. Right, but I look it up in the book before I go.
All right, last question. As far as I know, in terms of the standby agreement, the only outstanding benchmark that is left is getting an independent central bank. We have others, but they are ongoing. But how independent will the Bank of Jamaica be from the fiscal authorities in order to effectively carry out its mandate of inflation targeting?
Well, the independence speaks to independence of their operations. It speaks to the governance structure being reconfigured. Right now, you have the governor who is kind of the sole authority. In the new regime, you will have different committees. For example, an important committee will be the Monetary Policy Committee. That's where decisions and deliberations about market environment, inflation will be done, and the decision will not just be that of the governor, it will be coming out of the Monetary Policy Committee. You'll have changes as well as to how the board is selected. It will be on the same level as how the governor is selected. So there are many governance changes that will happen to ensure that you have this independence. Additionally, the Bank of Jamaica's balance sheet will be shored up so that they have the financial wherewithal to support the decisions that they make.
Sorry, two critical things. Will the governor still remain as the chairman and CEO of the bank? And would the fiscal authorities be able to still tap the BOJ for budgetary support if the need arises?
There will be specific rules defined in the legislation as to what the government can and cannot do. They'll be very specific. It will limit, you know, how much, what the interaction is, or you know what the funding is. There'll be very specific limits. All right.
All right, thank you so much, Minister. Any other questions before we close? All right, we have one final from William Mitchell. We like the robust interaction this morning. We have gone about an hour, longest for a long time. All right, William, final question.
Two quick ones from Minister Reid's
Yes.
presentation. One, when will the construction work start at the Goodyear factory? And two, when will we be able to travel to Russia without the visa?
Russia,
Yeah.
okay. All right. The Russian agreement, Minister,
Yes. So
if those matters.
no, so all right. So first one, when will the construction work begin in the Goodyear factory in St. Thomas? And two, the Morant Bay one.
Yes.
And two, when can we start to travel to Russia without a visa?
All right, thank you for those questions. The equity in government, all right.
All right. In the Morant Bay project, so just by way of process, once the matters come to cabinet and we approve them, right, then there is the next layer of implementation. So for we don't have a timeline yet in terms of, we just approved that, so there are some other processes that will have to take place. But we anticipate, however, from the information that I have, that I think it's a project that would take about 18 months thereabouts. So we're hoping that by now and the end of this financial year, there should be some start in that project, and it will take about 18 months in terms of executing. Everything works very well. And then the next question was the matter of the visa requirement for Russia. As I mentioned, that we have to do some paperwork, so I'm hoping that we can do those very quickly, and so we can have those reciprocal arrangements. So I don't want to give you a timeline that you're going to hold me to, because I know sometimes in government things, you know, paperwork sometimes take a little time. I'm hoping that by the end of this, we're almost at the end of the year. Yes, we're hoping that in short order we'll be able to utilize this new facility. Oh, sorry, yes, the equity. Yeah, I have to get those specific, because there's some overall costs of the project, and we can get that from Minister Williams and send it to you later.
All right, and let me assure members of the media that as soon as we get those better particulars, we'll certainly be distributing to all of you, all right? May I then use the opportunity to thank everybody for attending today's post-cabinet media briefing. I thank you for the robust discussions we had and questions coming, and we'll see you again at another time. Have a good morning, everybody.